Doom Metal, greetings, dear fellow Rauta viewers. Today I will tell you about a band that is both at the same time very new and also has this kind of a history which is almost like a sort of a luggage. Let's welcome Goden, or like it's written here, Goden. This is a United States based band which features a couple of old members from a band called Winter, which I just recently reviewed here on the channel as the last month's classic review. Now the thing is, these albums are actually out on the very same date. That is, let me look, 8th of May 2020, but I decided to give Winter a proper chance to be the classic of the month prior to the release date, because I think it kind of deserves more attention, being a real classic from 30 years ago. As you can see, Beyond Darkness, the debut album of Goden, is laid with a lot of tracks. Almost 20 of them, but it's not that simple, and I'll get back to that in a bit. Let's just take a little look on this CD and the booklet, that is the ingredients, or what it's included on this rather interesting debut album. As you probably noticed already, this one is more or less dotted with sort of manifestation tracks. There are quite a few of them, and then there are actually tracks that are music. So it's actually an album which is filled with spoken parts as well as the real musical tracks. So it's a rather different than your typical album. But the thing here is, this is mostly of doom metal, which is then again also the heritage which Winter kind of left behind when they just called it quits way too soon after the first album, which I think is rightfully considered as the doom death metal original gangster, well, original album anyway, in the terms of doom death. And as that album was the case, it was very heavy and slow paced and very crusty. One could say, if Celtic first decided to pursue death metal rather than black metal, well, that is what Winter could have been. And Goden is still different, even though it features a couple of old Winter members, but it's also a new band that you shouldn't really mess with that just like that. So while the DNA is just right there with this album, I mean basically everything, even from the visual side, is right there. There are differences between these albums. So whereas Winter could be seen like doom death metal, this is definitely more on the doom side. Now, curious thing is that this is almost the same lineup, but it's still different, and there are two main factors to this. Now, the main thing here is, if we take a look at this metal archive site to give you a little bit of information here, you will see the new lineup here. Now, Goden was made and founded by this guy called Stephen Flam, which also happens to be this ex-Winter member, like I basically tried to say here. It's a little bit different here. I mean, if you take a look at this last known lineup, the lineup that Winter basically was, you will see three guys here, of which John Elman and Stephen Flam were the kind of founding fathers of the band. And now that John Elman is missing, it all goes back to Stephen Flam, which is here with guitars and songwriting, basically the whole concept of the band. And this is kind of with the help of these two other members, Goden is right there, not just with guitars, but also these dramatic keyboards, and also this time female vocals, which are quite different thing that Winter had it going. Now, not necessarily worse or better, but just different. Where Winter was more about this doom death approach with kind of a growly vocals from the tomb in a way. This Nixta, or as the case here is, in case you want to take a look at this personal profile of Vascalas, it's female vocals which are kind of a little bit different. That is more on the raspy black metalish side. side. It's not so much shrieky, but still quite a different than Winter style. And this all, brings quite a little different atmosphere here. Now, those spoken parts, which are actually very moody and kind of cool, especially for the first time you hear them, well, they kind of paint an image, a kind of a mental image that is, which kind of brings Goden into a different place. Now, even though there are lots of overlapping in the terms of like slow tempo, very dramatic output, use of keyboards in a way that they are not overwhelming, but they're right there to kind of create this sort of shade into the music. These spoken parts are a little bit more like a narrative to the whole album, and it creates this different feeling. Obviously, it's altogether different when we're talking about 1990s release than 2020 release, but in so many ways, Goden is like a trip to the past. One can even say this whole thing reminds me of very much what Triptychon is to Celtic Frost. So basically the same DNA, same genes are spread all over the place, but still it sounds different. It sounds familiar, but different. And this is something that people need to understand. This is not Winter Part 2, but this is just like a sprout from the same ground, but a little bit different things going on. And Goden is doing a nice job in that. But in case you're expecting this kind of a death metallic feel, this kind of a crusty output right there, they kind of get disappointed. This is more, like I would say at least, kind of a stepbrother to old My Dying Bride, who was just left in the cave instead of, growing and maturing the way that, well, My Dying Bride has been doing. Or even more so, Anathema. They all have these growly death metal, doom metal hybrid past. And they started to evolve into different places. Now, Goden is much like that, but also more primitive. And as such, it's not so beautiful as My Dying Bride or Anathema, but also a little bit more towards the Winter style, and yet still in a different place. So it's more like this kind of a missing link to some other mutations, if you will. And that makes this all quite interesting. So in my opinion, Goden is doing an interesting debut for sure. It's heavy, it's dramatic, it's slow-paced, and it's kind of a sinister atmosphere in a way. But it's not on the level where a Winter album was, in my opinion anyway. But definitely something that you should be checking out in case you just happen to like Winter, in case you happen to like old school doom metal. Just in a little bit different fashion, but it's right there. Nicely executed and all that stuff. Now, there is one point which I want to mention before ending it all here, is that the album is over 76 minutes overall length, and that is kind of a too much to bear, especially you're kind of looping this album like I am for reviews. And I think this could have worked better if it was two separate releases. But that is, of course, just a matter of taste rather than anything. Well, everything is subjective when we're talking about music or any kind of art, so you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, this album is out 8th of May, so give it a listen. It's nice, but it's not easy to get into. Not really their mind-blowing album of the year, but still very nice addition to the whole doom metal genre. So with that information, tune your brain and prepare for some good. And I'm gonna say it's gonna be interesting trip you're gonna take. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Take care.